Hi, I'm Steffany Strange. Want to hear something scary?
Caitlin and her twin boys, Noah and Lucas, moved into a new home across the country. It was old, massive, intimidating, but the deal was too good to pass on. When the real estate agent handed over the keys, she looked relieved. "I wish you and your boys luck. Hopefully you're the last owners," she said jokingly. Caitlin asked what in the world she meant by that. The agent said it was just real estate humor and quickly left. The move was hard on the twins. They had to make new friends and go to a new school. Plus, people at their new school were weird towards them. Most of the time, the other kids avoided them. The boys would hear whispers behind their backs like, "I wonder how long they'll last." But it wasn't a big deal to Lucas and Noah. They were each other's best friends. They spent days exploring their new big house, getting to know every room, all the nooks and crannies. Then, in the attic, they found something hidden away. A large, beautiful, ornate mirror. Noah, a fan of antiques and history, loved it and immediately asked their mom to put it in his room. But Lucas hated the thing. He didn't know why, but just looking at the mirror, let alone into it, filled him with dread. That night, Noah startled awake. In his dream, he had heard someone calling for help. Awake, he caught a glimpse of movement out of the corner of his eye. He sat up in bed, staring at his own startled reflection in the mirror. Wait, there was something wrong with the reflection. Noah got out of bed, walking slowly towards the mirror. He tried to figure it out. Closer now, he realized the room was wrong. Run down, filled with shadows. The sheets on his bed were dark with, was that blood? Then again, someone called for help. It was coming from the mirror. Suddenly, there was a bang on the mirror. Within the mirror, a hand whacked on the surface again. Noah stood shocked as a young, terrified boy stepped in front of him. Encased in the mirror's reflection, the boy cried out, "Help us, please. You have to get us out of here. It's in here and it won't stop. Help me," and reached his hands out. Instinctively, Noah reached back to help, but as his palm touched the mirror surface, a demonic creature stepped into frame, pushing the little boy aside. Its talons pierced the surface of the mirror and grabbed Noah by the wrist. It laughed as it yanked him into its depths. The next day was Saturday. Caitlin hummed while she made a chocolate chip pancake breakfast. She liked to give her family a treat before they'd all clean the house together on Saturdays, but only Lucas sat down to eat. They called out for Noah. There was no answer. They searched his room, then all over the house. Caitlin began to get frantic, and then they heard Noah crying. It was coming from his room. Shocked, they saw Noah in the reflection, curled up, sobbing loudly in a corner. They banged on the glass, but he didn't respond. Caitlin left to get a hammer. She didn't know what was going on, but she'd get her baby out of there. Lucas waited alone in the room for his mother to return. Suddenly, a voice spoke from the mirror.
"Do you miss your brother? Come here. Come in here, Lucas, and get him."
Heading back to the room with her hammer in hand, Caitlin felt something was wrong. A deafening silence filled the house. Seized with terror, she ran into Noah's room. It was empty. Running over to the mirror, she saw both of her boys huddled with each other. The mirror demon stood over them like a carrion of death. "Give me back my children," she screamed.
"Come here and get them,"
it mocked. Caitlin rushed towards the mirror. Days later, the real estate agent dropped by, quietly letting herself into the house. She walked through the rooms until she found the mirror. Looking into the mirror, she saw blood splattered in the room, and one of the boys, it was either Lucas or Noah, she couldn't tell the twins apart, curled up in a corner. Tearing up, the real estate agent whispered to the mirror, "Is it enough yet? Please, were they enough? Can I have my little boy back now?" Previously, after she had discovered that she couldn't destroy the demon's mirror or get it out of the house, she had tried to hide it, but no matter where she put it, the next family always seemed to find it.
"Emily,"
the mirror demon whispered back to her.
"I need one more family."
No. Emily broke down crying, screaming that the mirror had promised that before. The mirror smoothly answered,
You can get me another family, Emily.
Or you can come here, come in here and get your son.
Using Caitlin's signature and information, Emily put the house up for sale again. It didn't take long for new buyers to come by. It never did. Not at the price she listed the house for. A happy family with 4 kids. When she handed over the keys, her stomach dropped. But she had to hope that this time it would really be the last family, that this time she'd be able to bring her son home.
Daniela and Diego lived in a modest cottage located off a busy road on the edge of the industrial port of Bilbao. They were happily married, and after the birth of their beautiful twin girls, they felt their life was complete. The twins were well-behaved and never fought or argued. They always played happily together, only getting upset when they had to be apart. They hated to be separated. One day, their mother had to go to the shop to buy some milk and bread. She didn't have the car and couldn't leave the twins alone. She gathered her bags and held each girl by their hand, quickly making their way into town. As they began to cross the busy road, the girls were fussing because they wanted to hold each other's hand. They both began to cry loudly, distracting Daniela. She looked down at her daughters, begging them to hush and behave. She only took her eyes off the road for a split second. There was a loud screech followed by a horrible crunching sound. She felt the bones in her legs shatter like glass. Her daughter's tiny hands were torn from her grasp as all 3 of them went flying in the air. Daniela could barely move as she tried to gather herself as quickly as possible. Her eyes darted around to find her daughters. No! The girls had been run over by the truck that was racing down the road. Their bloody remains were scattered across the pavement. Daniela wailed nonstop. The grief of the pain was worse than the damage of the truck. She was so consumed by her disbelief, she couldn't tear her eyes away from her babies laying dead only steps away from their home. Diego tried to comfort his wife, but she was inconsolable. Over and over, she whispered continually, "This is all my fault. This is all my fault." A few years later, Daniela and Diego were still learning to live with their loss, but they rejoiced when finding out that Daniela was pregnant and they would once again be having twins. But soon, panic set in. Daniela would wake in the middle of every night screaming and sweating. Her heart was pounding out of her chest. She was having terrible dreams of the accident. The faces of her poor babies' lifeless bodies in the street were etched in her mind. It all felt so real. It's almost as if her twins were trying to tell her something. Daniela was wide awake that she would pace the house at night, too afraid to go to sleep for fear of her nightmares. One night, she cried out loud, vowing to the moon and the stars that she would never let what happened to her first 2 children happen to her next 2. And after that, the nightmares seemed to disappear. That is when both parents agreed that they would not tell their new children about their sisters until the girls were much older, and they were careful to never mention the tragic accident that occurred right outside of their home. Although Daniela and Diego were thrilled to be given a second chance, these twin girls were a handful from the beginning. As they grew, they were mischievous, arguing all day long. They never seemed joyous and content like their older siblings, instead always scheming and giving their parents trouble. Despite doing her best to avoid repeating the past scenario, the day finally arrived when Daniela needed to go to the shop with the girls. Knowing she needed to face her fears and keep those little girls safe, she gave them a stern warning before they crossed the road. "You must behave, girls. You listen to me, and you do not let go of Mommy's hand." As the 3 stood at the edge of the road, her heart beat faster. Daniela took hold of each twin and held them tightly. As they began to walk across the road, the girls began to struggle and cry. Daniela could feel them wiggle free from her grasp, and she panicked, especially when she heard the air horn of a semi. "Girls!" She screamed, trying her best to grab the children as the truck hurtled towards them. "No, Mommy," the twins cried in unison, moving back onto the sidewalk. "We don't want to die. Again." Miss Gibbons sat watching her twin daughters play. She desperately wanted to know what they were saying, but June and Jennifer had a sisterly bond so strong they had invented their own language. It was a language that only they could understand. Although she didn't understand the words, it appeared Jennifer was the boss. Since the girls were unwilling to participate in class, the girls struggled at school. In their hometown in Wales, they were the only non-white children, and they suffered relentless bullying due to their differences. Before long, they became known as the Silent Twins. Soon, they refused to engage with anyone else at all, becoming isolated and inseparable, and even mirroring each other's behavior. It became harder to tell them apart. It was as if their personalities were interchangeable. One day, a twin would appear as June, the next day, she would appear as Jennifer. Before long, a school nurse referred them for a psychiatric review, and they were being sent to separate boarding schools. But instead of helping them to establish independence without each other, the twins withdrew further into themselves. Staff at the schools would have to drag the girls from their beds. Without each other, they didn't communicate with anyone else at all. Realizing that being separated was making things worse, the twins were sent home. This time, Miss Gibbons watched her teens filling the pages of notebooks with stories and diary entries. When they ran out of paper, they began scribbling all over their bedroom walls. Along with their creativity, they also started to exhibit some undesirable behavior. The twins committed several petty crimes. This escalated to arson, and once again, June and Jennifer found themselves under their psychological assessments. This time, they were deemed unsafe to themselves and society and were committed to a maximum security psychiatric facility filled with dangerous criminals, housing some of the UK's most evil criminals. They remained in prison for several years, administered many different drugs and treatments with varying side effects trying to break their silence. At some point during their time in the facility, the twins, now young women, decided that in order for one of them to be able to live a full life, the other must die. Marjorie Wallace was visiting with the twins just before they became eligible to transfer to a lower security facility back in their hometown. She was a reporter and one of very few people they actually conversed with. During this particular meeting, Jennifer told her, "Marjorie, I'm going to have to die. We have decided." Of course, Miss Wallace was unsettled by this. She reported it to the medical staff, but they were not concerned since the twins were supervised and have not proven to be risk of harm to themselves. The day they were set to travel to Wales, Jennifer leaned her head onto June's shoulder and fell into a coma and passed away quietly. Doctors ruled it as a heart attack despite no medical history of a heart condition and no toxins found in her body during the autopsy. She was only 29. It seemed a pact had been made, and one life indeed faded, finally allowing the other to thrive. The diaries that the twins had kept revealed they might not have been as close as originally perceived. June believed Jennifer was a dark shadow constantly possessing her. Despite their apparent bond and insistence on only communicating with each other, June was fearful of Jennifer. According to the entries, she was the dominant sister, often feeling disdain for June. After Jennifer's death, June kept her part of the bargain. She became fully cooperative and was subsequently released from hospital and put back into her community, where she continued to do well and still lives today. Has she really been possessed by her domineering twin while she was still alive? Had Jennifer truly willed herself to die despite a lifetime of domineering June? The truth behind the silent twins remains a mystery. Thanks so much for listening. Like and share if this video gave you the chills. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the bell for notifications. See you next time.